This is CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast, with George Dubinsky, Joel Lindstrom, and Sean, the CRM Hobbit Tabor.
This episode of CRM Audio is sponsored by Alexa CRM. WordPress powers more than 25% of all the websites on the internet and is the number one choice for blogs, websites, and portals because it's open source, simple to use, reliable, and extendable. Dynamics CRM has become a de facto standard in sales, marketing, customer service, and industry solutions. Now they can work together thanks to the Dynamics CRM WordPress plugin built with love by the Alexa CRM team. Capture forms, engage your users and customers, all without writing any code. Control your site in WordPress, keeping your data in CRM. To build the plugin, Alexa CRM has created an open-source Dynamics CRM PHP toolkit, unlocking the world of Dynamics for PHP developers. Download your 30-day trial from alexacrm.com/plugin and instantly create a portal by connecting your CRM and WordPress site. We thank Alexa CRM for their sponsorship of CRM Audio.
Hello, George. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm very good. Looking at the sunshine outside and doing exceptionally well. How about yourself?
Good. I'm in Boston, Massachusetts today. I actually had some clam chowder tonight, so I'm having the authentic Boston experience. Here's going to Boston. My plane landed at 5 p.m. I got into my Uber and sat in the tunnel for an hour. It was quite an exciting experience.
Does Uber charge per like a taxi, like per minute when you're moving too slow?
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, I think it cost me. I think my ride was something like 10 miles, but it cost me about $60 or $70.
Stop complaining. Our rides to the airport in Uber is over $100, which is probably equivalent of like $60 these days. But
Have you ever had a scary Uber experience, or are your drivers usually pretty?
I had very unnerving experience. Not so much scary as in once I got into the car and the guy starts driving and he's kind of driving a bit erratically, and then I noticed like the both side view mirrors cracked. The left one is smashed completely, and then there are scratches on the car, and I didn't pay attention to so it looks like some kind of probably driving someone else's car or stolen car, I don't know.
Had some close calls. Yeah, I usually have pretty good drivers. One time I got a driver in a minivan, and she looked very high strung, and it was a scary experience the way she drove. Usually though, they're cleaner than taxi cabs and friendlier as well. So
they are. Do you have in US now Uber Eats?
We do. It has not yet come to South Carolina where I live. I know Atlanta has it in some neighborhoods, although apparently it doesn't go to Gus Gonzalez's neighborhood from what.
Well, which is good thing, I suppose, right?
Yeah. So, what's the idea? Do you have it?
Yeah, we do, but it doesn't go to our suburb. Apparently it's not a bad experience, but long overdue. Though in Australia, there's a strong competition. We have a company called Menulog. I believe someone bought them for some substantial amount of money, like for 90 million or something like this.
Wow.
So
there've been a few things like that in the U.S. that have failed that I know, and where I live in Greenville, South Carolina, we're I think number 4 for the most restaurants per capita in the U.S. It's crazy. I don't think anybody eats at home around where I live, and so it would seem like something like that could take off, but we're not. Maybe probably have to have a certain size of population to support something like that.
Interestingly enough, do you Do you get these Uber promotions when from time to time they do some silly things? Like we had you could order on Uber kittens into your office to pet for 15 minutes or something like that.
Yeah,
Like
I've got those, but here's the weird thing about my Uber mail I get is I very rarely use Uber at home, and so I think Uber thinks that I live in Seattle, because the first time I used it was at the MVP Summit probably 4 years ago or whenever, and I get notifications for Chicago and Seattle and Tacoma, Washington, all these places except where I live. So something with their marketing isn't quite accurate or something.
They're probably using wrong CRM.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody should call them up. All right, so the News Hobbit's not here, so I've got two main news stories, and it feels like we're right at the brink before the big feature dump of news around the fall release. In the MVP group, we've got some wind to some things we can't talk about yet, but granted, what struck me and becomes each release more and more clear is they have really gotten rid of a lot of the things that we have to complain about. With the date-only fields, with slight polymorphism with the customer field anywhere, with fixing a lot of the mobile bugs. A lot of things we've had to complain about for the last 5 years are taken away, and now that we're past that, I think we're going to see a lot of really, really cool stuff come out, especially now, and add to that with the Dynamics 365. It's just amazing how much things have changed even the last year, and how quickly things are accelerating. We'll talk a little bit more about the speed of change later. There's two news stories. Actually three. One is the list component for SharePoint has gone away. We don't talk a lot about SharePoint integration, and it kind of does what it does, which is document integration.
I did whinge about my pain of making CRM Online to integrate with SharePoint on premises.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that one. But as you may know, with 2016, or I guess with 2016, they announced that the list component would be deprecated. It really started with SharePoint Online, I believe, 2013. When that came out, it no longer supported iframing, which was basically what the list control does. And so Microsoft, the CRM team, rolled out server-side SharePoint, which behaves a little bit differently than the list control, but they've now announced that for online, there's an official date of when the list control is going to stop working, and that's what's the date here?
September?
It's going to stop working in September. Yeah.
But I don't think.
Or no, November 30th, 2016. It will stop. It will not be able to use it after that time.
I don't think it's caused by CRM. I think it's SharePoint enforcing some of the sandboxing.
Right. So if you have on premises, especially if you're still using SharePoint 2010, you're going to still be able to use the list control. The big reason I see people hanging on to it are two main reasons. One is that some partners, and back in the day we did this, extended the experience to allow for, say, additional functionality like specifying metadata on the documents. That's not supported with server-side SharePoint. The other thing is people like to see, or certain people like to see, the subfolders, and the SharePoint document library, the server-side SharePoint doesn't support that. However, now that I've experienced the server-side experience, especially once you're using groups, Office groups, and OneDrive for Business, and these other sources, I actually like the new experience. It took me a while to warm up to it, but if you've got all these different sources displaying in a common list, it makes sense why you don't see subfolders and drill into them. You still can see the path, so if you've got a subfolder in SharePoint, you still see all those documents, but the story makes sense once you get there, and also having the documents available from mobile is a big plus, especially if you travel and have to interact.
Okay, so SharePoint, basically the idea is you have to move. If you're using
If you're
list,
online.
if you're online, you have to move.
Yep.
You don't have any choice. So you're going for the.
Yeah.
Is the move straightforward? Switching from list to.
Generally, but if you have any kind of, if you have documents that, the main challenge I've found is training your users to the new experience, because there are differences in the way it displays it and the way that the controls work, and especially if you've got users, and we've got a couple that love to load up with a million subfolders and have their own organization schemes. It can be hard for them to do it. I found new clients, it's very easy because that's just the way it works. It's the ones that are used to it working a certain way and moving their cheese that can be challenging. All right, so the other stories I had were, besides the list control going away, we have now a preview of the common data model. And this is, we talked about in the last couple episodes with Dynamics 365. One of the new features is the common data model, which is the vision. It's not quite there yet, but the vision is a common data repository. So between your CRM type data, although CRM as a term may be going away, but let's just say your sales and marketing and customer service data and your financials data that would be Dynamics AX will all come together into this common data pool, and probably have other, be extensible with other things and be consumable from Power BI and Power Apps. And so this data source is available as a preview. I'll put a note in the blog post about this. I'll put a note in the show notes. But basically, you could sign up for the preview and play with it, especially in context of Power Apps. And I see this is a play to add a lot of value to Power Apps, where this can be, I guess, the data repository for your app that you build with Power Apps.
I wonder if we
are you signing up for the Common Data Model preview, George?
Absolutely. I'm curious what's going to be available. So it's obviously going to be a REST API. I wonder if we're going to have some CRM-like constructs, like fetch XML or similar.
Yeah, but I don't know.
The one thing I found interesting, I think they've got their priorities right. So I'm looking at the screenshot, and there's a list of entities. So there is a accounts entity, category sales, and then there is a alumnus entity, and category is party. I'm curious to see what they're going to adopt from CRM solutions model as far as extensibility is concerned. Not so much extensibility, how you can package your package what you develop, how you extended your CDM, how you can package it and give it to the customer. So that would be interesting.
I mean, if you read it, it sounds like you're describing CRM to me, because it talks about simple schema definition tools aimed at non-developers, standard schema and integration capabilities. So it sounds like the idea of the XRM idea, which is abstracting the complexities of creating an entity structure and fields and metadata and all these pieces, and making it accessible for people who aren't necessarily DBAs and developers. So it's almost like you're talking about CRM.
Yeah, indeed. I wonder. I'm just looking at the document. Fascinating document describing the preview, the entity reference, and I have no idea yet how they approached it. But remember, a few years back we had this discussion about how people have different identities,
right?
And that CRM model falls short of giving us the opportunity to recognize that people wear multiple hats under different circumstances. And if, let's say, individual, and it's quite common, like could be CEO in one company sitting on the board of directors of two other companies, and then people on a smaller caliber like us would have their private email address, and then working for a couple companies, perhaps subcontracting for another one, and having multiple email addresses and multiple identities. So I wonder if that challenge has been addressed. The reason why I'm asking is that I've been working lately on a very good challenge of academic data, collating data coming from different universities. We have CRM, which we're trying to sort of put this data into, but the idea is that data coming from different researchers, and the same article could be written by 3 different people from different universities. But interestingly enough, the same person can be affiliated with multiple research organizations, and they would know them under different, identity, and would have a different email address. So it's really challenging to put together all the data when it comes from different places about the same person, but different hat.
Yeah, no, that's been a common thing, and that's a challenge not just with CRM, but also your Outlook or Exchange contacts, where you get multiple people, and so realizing people have different personas. But looking at the page, the web page for the Common Data Model preview, these are the functional groups of tables that are in there. So foundation, that includes things like companies and addresses, that includes things like addresses. People, organizations, and groups, that's companies and people. Sales, that's sales functions like leads and opportunities. And case management. What does that sound like? So it's like give you a data model, and then you've got Power Apps to build the UI to it.
Yeah, but slow down. Have a look at purchasing entities, and sales entities have things like sales invoice tax entity.
Right, but in the two
to me
tiers,
sounds like more. Yeah.
But again, go sign up for the preview if you want to check it out. I think it's interesting, and it's really our first tangible thing to touch and feel from the Dynamics 365 announcement.
And I can say, by looking at the reference data they have, that it's A, it's US, B, it's from old Microsoft guys, because size is only small, medium, large, and extra large, so there is no room for extra small. That identifies that list as being specifically US targeted, right? And then social networks.
Some of us Americans are smaller than others.
Social networks include MySpace.
Wait a second, was that a jab at me?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Last news story was, and this is something I posted on CRM Tip of the Day, but about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I wrote a book about mobile based on my experiences with the initial versions of CRM for mobile. And there was a lot of gaps and a lot of limitations, and there were a lot of entities that didn't work on mobile. And some of the core ones that didn't work are some of the sales entities, quotes and orders, also invoices, but nobody uses invoices. But a lot of people use quotes, and a lot of people use sales. And glad to say that, and I didn't realize this until actually I think it was a client pointed this out. The CRM roadmap, they kind of quietly snuck in. Oh, by the way, quotes, orders, invoices work on mobile now. So, well, Microsoft didn't make a big deal about that. I think it's worth noting because I know there's people out there that are either not using mobile because their sales guys need to generate quotes, or they're using it, but wishing and praying that quotes would work. And good news, it does now.
That is very.
I guess that's all. It doesn't work offline yet.
But it is pretty cool for those customers that are using those functions, especially if they're hooking to their ERP with those entities.
I think I had one client who even wrote a custom quote entity so it would work on mobile. So it's good stuff. All right, so George, since you're a trainer, we were talking earlier about kind of the rapid pace of change, and I'm seeing some challenges when it comes to training, and that is I'm realizing, and this is in helping my internal team be prepared and talking to clients, when it comes to like training options out there, it really became clear the other day when I was looking at voice of the customer and document generation, some of these new features, and trying to find training materials for them, and realized that we're kind of at a point now where the training material generation can't keep up with the release cycle. And so on one end, we've got people who want to learn the new stuff, and there's, in my opinion, a dearth of good training material about it out. And then on the other side is a lot of the training focuses on newer stuff, and so if you want somebody to find good training material about quote functionality in CRM or that kind of thing, stuff that hasn't really been updated for years, that's also hard to find up-to-date training material for the newer versions of CRM that cover some of those older features.
Well, there are multiple challenges with the rapid release cycle, and it's not specific to the latest announcements. It's been gradually ramping up over the past couple of years after CRM moved to the 6 months cadence release cycle. The challenge is that to create a good training material, right, you one would have to be comfortable with using specific features, right? I'm not saying you need to be an expert, but you have to be comfortable. You need to take them for a spin and, build a solution or two and so forth. So, and that's been increasingly challenging. We do get early access to the early builds, so we're part of the preview program. That gives us early access to the features, but early access is not a substitute for the real-life scenarios, real-life customers, and real-life deployments. So until I personally feel much more comfortable with the training that I deliver and that we create after I've done a project or two using those features, right? So that's increasingly challenging. To accommodate for that, training is definitely moving to a different format. We see a huge reduction in number in-class training. There's still every now and then there is a request for in-class training. There is no substitute for face-to-face interaction. But generally speaking, it moves to the model where level 100 and level 200 trainings are pre-recorded videos that you can find on Dynamics Dynamics Learning Portal. Unfortunately available to partners only, so if you're an individual, that may be a bit challenging for you to get an access. Though we did have a tip how to sell your soul for the access to.
There is a way to get it if you're not in the partner program.
You have to sell yourself.
There's some terms and conditions around that. It's not the easy access, but it's a way, especially if you do work for clients.
Yes, if you're trying to find,
say, the catch-22 is like to really teach people about it, you need to do some projects, but clients aren't necessarily going to pay you for on-the-job training either.
Exactly. So which leads me to another point. So what I wanted to say on the previous point is that level 300 training is basically majority is done as virtual. So we typically deliver twice a day, like in different time zones, which poses challenges sometimes. If you're the only one delivering it, it could be absolutely ungodly hours, like 2 to 4 in the morning or something like this. But you do what you got to do. But this fast pace of changes and fast pace of new features inevitably leads me to question not only readiness of trainers to create materials and deliver those features, but also readiness of customers. We increasingly seeing customers who basically tell us to not to entertain them with any new features because they just settled in with 2016 or with CRM Online, and they just not ready to consume any more features. They're not ready to get any more training. They have no room and no capacity, and that includes both their brains and their budgets.
Right. I was in a meeting with a new client, or this was actually before they became a client, but we're trotting out the whole show, and have people very talented showing the art of the possible, and you get to the end, and you know what they were most excited about? Tracking activities, exporting to Excel. And we're thinking it's going to be the whiz bang new stuff, field service, all this stuff, and the thing they're most excited about is stuff we had since CRM version 3.
Oh yeah, look, one of the great features customer got excited during private small training, like really for beginners users. One of the features was ability to select more than one record and run the workflow against those records. Mm. And everyone said, "Whoa, I didn't know you can do that." So they learned how to create workflow, but they didn't know that you can actually mark it as executable workflow, on-demand workflow, and you can run it against existing records. And they immediately it clicked in their heads that you can use this mechanism, say, to fix the data.
Right.
Right.
If you've got some business rules and you need to reapply those rules to the existing records, so running workflow is the way to go. And obviously, then it's quickly escalated to XRM Toolbox and the bulk workflow runner addition to the toolbox and so forth.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Joel, because literally, and this is no joke, this afternoon, that exact same conversation happened with me. I mean, the exact same thing.
Wow. That showed great foresight in me telling that. I just knew you had that
weird.
Experience today.
It's a little eerie. I'm wondering if I need to check for bugs and monitors. But it is funny because it's sometimes the most the simplest things are the most usable, and those are the things that really pop. So.
Well, and one of the things, one of my kind of mottos of life, I don't want to say my indispensable rules of life or anything, but one of the things that's been true for me, and probably the best way I've learned stuff is, and I tell my team at work this all the time, is the best way, in my opinion, like with new CRM functionality, to force yourself to learn it and learn it really well is set yourself a deadline to have to teach somebody else that feature. And so, for example, this week I was hosting a CRM-UG webinar about online versus on-premises based on a blog post I wrote like 6-8 months ago. But then I realized everything, or like the cheese has moved since then, and everything I put in the blog post is now out of date. Some of the things that were online only then are now on premises, and so I basically had to dig in and figure it out. And so some of the things that I knew from a theoretical standpoint, but I had never really played that much with, like document generation and voice of the customer, it forced me to learn them and learn them pretty well. And so then I was able to demonstrate them on the webinar. And I put in a good plug for Derek Borman's Tipster Guide 2 videos, because voice of the customer, of all the training material, his 5 or 6 videos, they're concise, they're to the point, and they're the best thing out there. And so I actually showed where to find them. I said, I showed you this high level. If you want to learn how to route responses and really make this work, go here, watch these videos, and you'll be an expert.
Yeah, those are great videos. They really are. He does a great job.
But the one tip of the day I use as well, because document generation, I was looking at all the documentation, all the blog posts I could find showed how to get the if you want to lay out your fields and go to the XML fields and insert them, that's easy. But there was nothing that clearly showed me how to make related records grids work, and it was kind of unclear. And so I used the tip of the day about how to extract the templates, which is one of my favorite tips, and I didn't write it, and so it's one of my favorites that I didn't write. And so it was basically one of the MVPs. Who was that suggested it? Was that Karsten, or I think that was Adam, Mr. Verreau, that figured this out. Basically, if you want to get the template, there's no extract for the template button, but if you create just an on-demand workflow that calls the execute template action, whatever that's called, and run it against an entity for which that template isn't for, you'll get a note that has the empty template in it. And I had to figure out how to make a quote report with basically quote header and then quote line items. And so there's a really good opportunity summary template in there, and I got that, and it's really clear. You basically create a single row table and put the fields from the related entity in, and then when you run it, it will insert a row for each line of that table. So that's just an example of getting to our topic of how do you learn it, how do you keep up. One way to, and some people don't like learning by fire, but for me, give yourself a deadline where you've got to either teach somebody, present this feature, speak at your CRMUG meeting, something like that, and I can almost guarantee you're going to learn it.
Yeah, and it's also going to, you're not only going to learn the functionality, but you're also going to find that the things that you do, if you use the function, sparingly, say, and there's a certain way you do it, by doing really the research, you're going to find out that there's a Microsoft way to do it, there's a way that most users out in the community do it, and then there's the way you do it, and you can really evaluate pros and cons of those and understand and communicate to who you're training the best way to do it.
Right, but yeah, and it's just accelerating, and I think this is like the most exciting time I can remember to be working with Dynamics CRM, just because the rapid change. It feels like we have all the cool toys now, and the complaint being there's so much I can't keep up is a lot better than why don't we have all these cool things that Salesforce has.
Yep, agreed.
Okay, so one of the topics I wanted to talk about, and that basically piggybacks on the necessity of learning things or doing things or showing things, is how far you take the concept of dogfooding. I mean, how far do you take the concept of using CRM? I hope we all use CRM in our own businesses. No, what I meant is that the one thing that did come up lately is that with all these new deliveries for trainers, in trainers community, with all the new materials, new deliveries, we are pressed to deliver a lot in a very short time frame, and with different skill sets. Some people are still catching up. There is a train the trainer program as well, so where you need to catch up on different things and to be trained in. So we are currently thinking of getting our own instance for CRM Online and using project services to manage basically all the trainers, the skills, the schedule, and so on, the requirements, and so on and so forth. So because currently it's like a ping pong. Oh, are you available then? And no, I'm not. So who else is available? And it's different people, different skills, different availability. It's a nightmare, really nightmare to manage. So
right.
I think that would be a perfect kind of showcase, quite complex project to manage, and PSA should be able to handle that. But when I was asking how far do you take it, I meant literally taking CRM to all the areas of your life. Think about your private life.
right? You do same stuff what you do in business. You communicate with people, you follow up on things, you're trying to sell something to your relatives, like barbecue party or what's not. Are you trying to avoid one? But you do have activities, you need to kind of market yourself on the Facebook and so on and so forth. So
yeah, I use field service to make my kids clean their rooms. It works great. I give them a work order. They get that room cleaned up right away.
So you get the update when they complete their job?
Yeah. And when I looked at my wife in project service the other day and I said, your utilization is kind of down right now, what's going on?
How'd that go over? Pretty good?
Not well. No, not well.
Okay.
No, but I think it's funny because I had colleagues who I believe one of them used marketing lists to manage his personal Christmas cards one year. And I think,
how did that go?
I think he... I don't know if he tracked campaign responses for those that send him cards back or something. I don't know, but I think there's principles that I find myself in the way that I'm kind of a calendar, kind of a organization and productivity geek in some ways, where I get into these things. But it comes down to it. I don't think that using CRM in my normal life to do it. Although I will say when I do calls like to have to call, the doctor's office, and I want to remember I called them today, so I know I need to follow up with them. I don't hear back from 2 days, or I've got a landscape project I'm going to be doing when the weather in South Carolina cools down a little bit. So I'm coordinating, the landscaper and the other resources there. So I will, do my own personal version of activities and capture notes and put reminders using things like Wunderlist. But I don't think using CRM for all of that would be a little bit of overkill, I think.
Surely you get requests from friends and relatives who find out that you are in IT industry and they ask to fix their computer.
I say no.
My mother-in-law does every time we visit. Yeah. And it's the same thing. Those stupid downloadable video games that have nothing but malware every time.
Yeah, I actually set up like a what is it? It was Log Me In before, but whatever the free version of like Log Me In or Go to My PC is, so that when my mom calls me, I can help her out. But I'll try and limit it to just my mom. But yeah, so your questions, George, make me ask: Are you trying to use CRM for something in your personal life or something?
Oh God, no! I was just curious how far you take it.
Yeah. Well, I think I take the
security for items in my personal life would exceed capabilities of CRM security.
Yeah. I personally try to avoid the cliche eat the dog food, because one time in my younger days on a dare I ate some dog food. It wasn't pleasant.
Well,
I mean,
I've heard of people who actually enjoy it.
Was it organic? Was it dry? What were we talking?
I think it was either Purina dog chow or Elpo, not like the canned stuff, but like the dry kind. It tasted kind of like granola, but in a bad way.
Okay.
And that brings up personal bad memories for me. But yeah, I think eating the dog food, if you will, from a business perspective. If you're a CRM consultant and you're not using CRM as part of your job, like if you're trying to help your client implement CRM for Outlook and you don't run it yourself and know the potential challenges that can arise from it, you're not going to be very effective in your job.
Agree.
And it's not. And from a business perspective, now that we have all the cool stuff, it's not a drudgery anymore. I mean, I remember back in the day where, we wanted to be be Microsoft, and this is under the Steve Ballmer days where we don't admit iPads exist. So, instead of the iPhone, you've got the Trio Windows Mobile pre-Windows Phone with the keyboard and little stylus, and you have to use IE, and IE is still at version 6 when everybody's moved to Firefox and Chrome, and you were kind of being the lone guy over there in the corner, not able to use the cool stuff. But now that it's socially acceptable to be walking around Microsoft campus holding an iPhone, and you can admit that you use other browsers sometimes, and the Microsoft browsers like Edge, aren't my favorite browser, but it's got a lot better now that you can actually choose where you save downloads to. It's not a pain to say I use the Microsoft stuff, because it can legitimately say there's those things. But some things, if there's an alternative from Adobe or even Google or whatever, you're not totally out of the, like you said, Dropbox. You can still admit you use Dropbox, and Microsoft's Power Apps and Flow work with Dropbox now.
Yeah, indeed. Interestingly that you mentioned, remember a few episodes back, and I did say that I change my browsers from time to time because one becomes bloated or don't support something, like Chrome stopped supporting some of the features. So in CRM, like in Chrome, you can't really do customizations because it still relies on some dialogues every now and then, and Chrome basically killed it. So I have to go to Firefox, but Firefox became a bit bloated lately, so not my favorite browser anymore. IE breaks for some things, again in customizations area. Surprisingly, I find myself when I'm working with CRM more and more I use Edge, and it seems to be working just fine, and it's fast.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried this several times, but pull up, Edge, IE, Firefox, and Chrome, and go to the same website in them and look at your memory usage, and you'll find it's significantly different. Usually I find Chrome is the most memory intensive.
It is the most memory intensive.
I couldn't use Edge for a while because when you download something, it wouldn't let you choose where you put it. Now it does, and it seems to be more friendly. So,
look, the only downside for me with Edge is that LastPass doesn't have an add-on for Edge yet. So every time I need a password, I need to switch to one of the browsers with LastPass support, copy the password, and go back and paste it and go for it. So far that's the biggest showstopper for me. Because I stopped using passwords I can remember. If I can't remember.
Given all this, how Microsoft is working much much better with a broader range of apps and solutions, it really starting to get to make you wonder, what is the ideal user experience with Dynamics now, both on the PC, on the web, and on a tablet device. I mean, because a while ago we were hearing the mantra that if you use the entire Microsoft stack, you get the ultimate user experience, right? Fully integrated across all platforms, everything. Now,
I think you bring the interesting point. Yeah,
you have multiple devices, you have multiple solutions. Like now, you can do Dropbox. You don't have to do OneDrive. You can do, you can use iOS apps. You can use the Office apps in iOS. You can use, you have the lightweight app for Outlook. So it's kind of interesting that you can't. It's not as simple as saying, well, you get all Microsoft and you're going to be great, because you may not have as good a user experience as if you went cross platforms.
I think the right answer to that is there's not a one best experience. The best experience is the one where you are, the one closest to where you are. So what I would say is, when I'm on my phone, I am a big fan of how the mobile app, when I click the hyperlink for the number, it pops open a phone call activity now. So if I'm on my phone or getting ready to go somewhere in my car and I want to call, a client, it's super easy for me to capture one or two notes about the call and log an activity. It's not painful at all. But then if I'm on my computer, the browser experience with the quick search and everything is there. And I've got my own dashboard set up on mobile, so then when I want to look at my team, pulling that up on mobile, I like that experience. And so it's not like the old days where we'd have clients who say, I only want people using CRM in Outlook. They felt their users were dumb. They felt either they couldn't trust them or they didn't understand how things work, so we want to make it as one process to rule them all. And Microsoft has accepted the reality that that's not the reality.
Well, the reality is that you and I, we talk about and we care about dynamic CRM. The reality is that customers quite often don't give a second thought to the concept of dynamic CRM. They see a program that does a certain job, right?
Right.
So
and
they don't think in terms
of
CRM terms. They think in terms of work that needs to be done, and this happened to be a product that helps them to do that.
That's where CRM as a brand is kind of going away, replaced by kind of job-specific apps, if you will. So with Dynamics 365, you're still going to have everything in CRM, but it's going to be, you want to do sales, you want to do marketing, you want to do customer service, more role-specific, smaller applications. So
Dynamics 365 sales module.audio. Is that our new URL?
I think so. Yeah, that's what are we gonna our little empire here with tip of the day and CRM audio. What are we going to be, the Dynamics 365 sales area tip of the day, or we'll have to think about that.
Project service automation tip of the day.
I would register, Dynamics 365 tip of the day if you haven't already.
I have registered some Dynamics 365 sites, but you know what I found? If you just increase the number, it typically works. Like, let's say power365.com, probably taken, right? But if you just go power366.com, it's probably available. Tool of the week. I found myself working this week a lot with SQL Server integration services, and whilst I do use Kingsway Soft CRM integration component, that's not the part that makes my scenario tool of the week. It's more about using power of SSIS for repetitive tasks. And that's again for this project, for university project, where we get data sources from different universities, and they come in the same format from different universities, and the format could be convoluted, and it's really hard to talk universities into changing that format, so you have to adapt. So now we have like packages for repetitive data processing for the spreadsheets. They come from different universities. They come into one place, and SSIS makes it exceptionally easy. It does require some skills, but it makes it exceptionally easy to process volumes of data, do the lookups, scrub the data on the fly, and run it. And interestingly enough, that you don't even need SQL Server unless you do use SQL Server. Right. For example, you can have Excel component and Kingsway Soft component, and put the data from Excel, pull the data from Excel, massage, merge, whatever, cleanse, and put them into CRM. But you don't actually need the SQL Server. Despite the name of SQL Server integration services, you don't need SQL Server. I run it on my workstation, and I don't have SQL Server installed.
So to do that? What did you do? Did you just get the installer for SQL
Server
Server
data tools
and just install the data tools?
SQL Server data tools. That's what you need.
And a lot of this stuff too. I'm not sure about this, but like for authoring reports, you can actually just download the Express version of SQL and choose to install the data tools, and you can use that for writing reports. There was a client who was trying to write reports, and it turned out they had Visual Studio 2013, and the format was just didn't work. And so I just told them download you don't want to mess up your Visual Studio install, but you can just download the version of SQL Express for the version of CRM you have, and that'll work as well.
Indeed, and what I wonder, and I'd be very curious to hear about stories where people created effectively a user-friendly package that when you run it, it prompts you for the file name or for this or that, and it leads you through the series of steps and lets you to actually complete the data import, say, from Excel spreadsheets into CRM or from some other data source and things like that. So I wonder if anyone done that, because it is possible to create user interface components as well. So I'm just curious how far people take SQL Server integration services.
Yeah, no, that's good, and I know.
But for
I
automation,
used to do more integrations. I haven't had a lot of time to do integrations, but yeah, we really appreciate Kingsway Soft and.
But what I'm saying is that if you talk to CRM, but just in general, processing data, SQL Server integration services is fantastic tool. So that goes. SSIS takes my vote as a tool of.
This has been CRM Audio, the Microsoft Dynamics CRM podcast. You can hear previous episodes on our website, crm.audio. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, follow us on Twitter at CRM Audio, or leave us a comment on our Facebook page, facebook.com/CRM podcast. If you have any topic suggestions or questions that you would like for us to answer on a future episode, please drop us an email at voice@crm.audio. Special thanks to Dale Simmons for our theme music. Go check out his website, dalesimmons.com. Please join us next time on CRM Audio.